Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, here in 2021, businesses are making changes to ensure they're set up for success in a COVID world, and it's more important than ever. And it's so important now that organisations are using new generation decision intelligence tools to get a more accurate and efficient view of their growing volumes of data. And I think the ability to make informed decisions based on data and insights is the future of decision making. And business intelligence for some time now has made waves throughout organisations because it provides that useful information and data that allows executives to make decisions that are good for their business. Makes perfect sense. However, the implementation of decision intelligence can further bolster these insights, leading to more contact from both customers and operations, and overall better decision making by executives. So with all that in mind, I've invited Imam on the podcast today, who is the Chief Product Officer at Quantexa. So buckle up and hold on tight so I can beam your ears all the way here to the UK so you can join me in conversation with Imam. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Hi, my name's Imam Hoque. I'm one of the co-founders here at Quantexa and the Chief Product Officer. My background, I guess I've been in big data and analytics for quite some time. I did my master's in AI actually back in 1992, would you believe it, at Northwestern in the US. So I've been around quite a while in the space.
Fantastic. And Quantexa is a decision intelligence company, which is an incredibly cool title there. But for anyone listening that might be outside of the industry, or maybe got a business lead or a decision maker, can you tell me a little bit more about how you're using AI and network analytics to uncover hidden customer connections and behaviour? Because it's incredibly cool what you're doing there, isn't it?
I think the thing that we spotted was when you're trying to make a decision as a person, you make sure you got the full context. What you don't do is, if you're going to go and buy a house, just look through the letterbox and say, yep, I think that house is worth buying. I'm going to go ahead and buy it. You actually go in and look around and poke about, see what the heating system is, look at all your internal data. But you don't stop there. You also go outside the house and you might look at the crime rates, the education, the public transport systems, sort of like your external data. And then you make your decision. Now, there's this exactly the same for AI. If it's going to try and make a decision, which is, should I take this customer on or not? Should I offer them this product? Is this person a fraudster? Should I lend this company some money? It's the same thing. You need context. And so what we do at Quantexa is we bring data together from multiple sources, internal, external. We solve that sort of single customer view, master data management, whatever you want to call that problem, in an extremely slick way, both in batch and in real time across what can be 50 billion plus records in the case of our biggest customer. And we produce a single view, and then we enrich it with the third-party data, and then we build the networks out from it. And then you apply your model to make that accurate decision. So I could give you an example. If you were to, want to lend money to Quantexa, you wouldn't just want to look at our historical financials and try and make a decision. Maybe you can lend us £50,000 like that automatically. But what if you wanted to lend us $1 million? Either you have to have a person poring over all our details, or you could join the data together. So you could look at our company directors, myself, my colleague, who is on our board, who our investors are. So you'd see, that we have Nick Donofrio, who's our chairman, ex-head of innovation at IBM. You might see John McAdam, who's on the board of Tableau. And you'd see who our investors are, Dawn Capital, and so on and so forth. And then you could also look at all our transaction data. So then you can see who are our customers, who pays us money, how many of them are there, how often they've been paying us money, who are our suppliers. So you would see all of our different, tier one banks who are customers like HSBC and Standard Chartered, And then you would see our partners who we pay, like Accenture, Deloitte, EY, KPMG, etc. And at that point, your model can make a much, much better decision than just looking at our financials alone. So that's what it's about. Context as input into models to make decisions.
I love that. And on your moving house analogy there, I was thinking one other thing that's changed over the last few years is people now won't even move without doing a broadband speed check in that area as well. It shows you how far technology has come. But businesses are making changes to ensure that they're set up for success in a post-COVID world. And is it more important that organisations are using a next-generation decision intelligence tool to get more accurate and a more efficient view of their growing volumes of data? But are there any other examples you can share with me about how you're helping enterprises make those more data-driven decisions? Because that seems to be where the focus is right now.
So what COVID has taught organisations is the world can change in a very rapid way where the past doesn't necessarily predict the future. And not only that, it's created a huge amount of extra work. You think about businesses, you think about banks dealing with businesses, lending to businesses, and so on and so forth. There's going to be enormous churn. Some businesses will go bust. Some have had a whole set of loans. Some will get absorbed. There'll be mergers and acquisitions. Directors will create new businesses, and so on and so forth. All of this, in a very short period of time, is driving huge burdens on know your customer because of all that churn. Situational awareness of your customer. Who are going to be the good customers I want to retain, and who are those that might not make it on the journey and I'm not so worried about them? Is there going to be fraud or financial crime going on? I've lent a load of money. What's the situation? So all of this can't be done in such a compressed timescale the old-fashioned way with lots and lots of people reviewing and looking at stuff. So we're helping one of the largest banks here in the UK, for instance, transform their KYC program so that they can not only onboard customers far quicker using the data that's there and automate things, but also do it on a trigger-based approach so that over time, as the situation of that customer changes, they get a trigger so they know, do I need to relook at the KYC? Or is it fine? Has the risk profile of the customer changed? Do I need to review them in 5 years or 1 year? So all of these things are driven by data, whether it's lending, whether it's fraud detection, whether it's compliance and anti-money laundering. What products should I offer them? Are they going to need invoice discounting or factoring in the short term to get them through this? Are they going to need a different type of lending? All of this evidence is in the data. And people are suddenly woken up and realized there's a huge amount more data available, and they're not necessarily leveraging it, like the transaction volumes, like the third-party data. So that's what's changing in the world. It's this sudden rapid change in requirements to fully understand the situation. And we've seen it with COVID itself has re-educated everyone on the importance of data. People in the high street know what models are and data and prediction and all this wonderful stuff, off the back of having to understand the COVID situation. So data is now becoming the sort of the key critical component to everything, whether you're going digital, whether you're dealing with change.
And for the techies that are listening, is there anything you'd tell me about the tech that makes all this possible? I appreciate you probably can't share too much, but is there anything you can about the tech that makes it all, that brings it all to life?
Yeah, so clearly there's the old Moore's law thing, which says tech can process more, better, faster. But actually, for me, the thing that's made the biggest difference is the ability for people to switch stuff or compute power on quickly, wind it up rapidly, shrink it down quickly. And that is all about this new containerized approach or the sort of more elastic approach to how you can scale up things. People often think of it, right, you mean cloud, but actually you can have on-premise containerized systems, or you can deploy into one of the big cloud environments, AWS, Azure, GCP, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure. So that has made a world of difference because compute power is now available at very low cost to scale up in an enormous way to process this huge volume of data. As I say, at our largest customer, HSBC, it's over 50 billion records. It's literally their entire data, all their customers, 200 and however many million of them, third-party data. It's sat there in the platform available for making automated decisions or understanding how those customers are operating. So the key transition, I think, is this move to open architectures, containerized approaches, lots of open source available so that people can really make use of that big data. That's been the big revolution.
And I think for everybody listening, whether they're looking at their home life and their lifestyle or the way that they work in the office and how they do business, if we compare with 12 months ago to what we're doing now, the world is an entirely different place. So with that in mind, do you have any customer stories that you could share that would just help people understand the difference between the old way that they may have been working and the new way of making these crucial business decisions?
Yeah, I like to use the expression swivel chair.
Yeah.
So in the old world, quite often, let's say I'm in an institution and I'm trying to make a decision about, it could be I'm procuring something, it could be that I'm dealing with a potential compliance issue or onboarding a customer or whatever it is. More often than not, I'm on one system looking something up, then I swivel around on my swivel chair and I go and check what's happening in another system that maybe has their accounts in it. A typical case in point would be anti-money laundering checks. So I'll be looking at the transactions, then I'll go online and try and look up a bit of background of the person, then I'll check what's in the KYC system. And on it goes, this sort of looking up lots of systems, manually trying to piece data together in my own head and think, okay, how many people is this person transacting with? Who are they transacting with that person's transacting with? Are they in a property that I expect them to be in for the sort of wealth I might associate with them? And you're trying to compile all of this in your head and then make a decision. So 90% of your work is laborious sort of data preparation and trying to bring the pitch together. What decision intelligence is about is, okay, twofold. On the easy decisions, can we make it fairly automatic? Can we say, you know what? This is a high likelihood that this is just a false positive. Don't worry about it. Just give it a cursory check. Or it may say, actually, this does require you to look at it. It is a complex case, but we pre-assembled everything and we've given you some indicators and we've done that exhaustive, deep searching effectively across the data automatically, flagging up what you should pay attention to, and then you look at it. So a lot of people will find themselves focused on the more interesting and complex stuff. What should I really be offering this customer now? What do they really need? Not sort of basic things, or is this really a fraud that's happening here, rather than just going through lots and lots of repetitive work. So it's really about automating as much as you can of the decisions, getting the models to take some degree of that expert input and running across all the data before you then pass it on to a user.
And you are someone that's working right in the heart of the industry and clearly passionate about the subject. It really comes across. So I'm curious, though, have you seen attitudes change towards business intelligence over the last few months and even years? Presumably, you have seen a lot of changes there.
Yeah, so business intelligence, if you look at the formal definition of it, there's been lots of tools around. It's been around for quite a long time. There's a lot of good players in the market who provide technology and people use it. But you've got to remember what business intelligence tends to be is get the data, bring it together and present it to a person to make some sort of a decision, which is fine if you're making few and far between strategic decisions and you can pore all over this data. But if you've got a team of 500 people who are trying to work out, what the problem is, maybe it is money laundering or something like that, they can't be using data in that way. It's not efficient enough. So business intelligence has become quite commodity now. It's almost like a hygiene factor. You've got to have business intelligence, but it doesn't give you the competitive edge. What gives you the competitive edge is if I can move from business intelligence to decision intelligence, which means not only does the system assemble all the data together and it could present it to you, but where it can, it'll use a statistical model or AI, whatever you want to call it, to make that decision automatically, 90%, 95% of the time. And where it can't, it can refer it on to someone who then can look at that big picture of all the interconnected data and understand exactly what's going on and make the really important decisions. So it's really about getting the competitive advantage unlocked that is in decision intelligence, as opposed to the hygiene factor that everybody now has, which is business intelligence. And that's the transition, I think, that's happening.
So when businesses come to you and ask for your assistance, what are the top concerns that they typically come at you with around implementation of decision intelligence, and how are you helping them overcome those challenges? Because I would imagine there's a few trends in the kind of things that they're coming to you and asking for your help with right now.
Absolutely. I mean, there's the classic, you go to IT and there's a lot of teeth sucking going on. Good English expression for those who aren't English on the call. But it's usually data quality, or how can I bring all this data together? Or there's too much data volume here for me to deal with. So they're the classic issues. Now, they're the problems that we've spent the last X years overcoming, working with the really large customers. If you've got a data quality problem, don't try and manually fix it with some horrendous long-running multi-year master data management program. If you're building a model, you just need it to be good enough to make your model better for those decisions. So usually you can fill in the blanks using maybe some external data or bringing some other data in your organization together. And you use more data to solve the poorer quality problem. So you may have a person's name, Imam Hoque, and you may have an address in one record, but another record, you got the name and his date of birth. And is it the same person? Well, it's really hard to tell at that point. But then maybe you've got his company's information that gives you the address and his date of birth. And that can bridge across too. So you bring together more data sources, internal, external, you solve those problems, and you generate context in doing so. And then there's the usual issues around sort of sourcing the data, ETL, getting the data in. What we've done is where we work with our customers, we say, okay, guys, don't try and map your data to some really complex model. Instead, get the data into an environment which is no mandated model, but at the time of consumption of the data, when you're building a model to make a decision, that's when you interpret what that data should do. So you can have a huge amount of data without that enormous ETL, big data warehousing project that often is a multi-year process. Because what you do is you just dump all your data into a classic Hadoop, S3, whatever your sort of environment is, NoSQL type thing. And then you run your analytics in an environment like Spark, or you push it into an operational real-time engine that you can use to make those decisions. But you're running the model at real time because use cases change so frequently now. 1 minute the CEO wants this, next minute they want that, or a government department's highest priority is this, or the next minute it's that. And you don't want to rewire all of your data world. You want to just change the app, if we call it an app at the top, where the model runs. And so that's how we overcome those big historic challenges that used to be in the data world.
Love that. And one of the things I always try and ask the guests on the podcast as well, especially if they're an expert in their areas, are there any myths or misconceptions that you'd like to lay to rest today? Because I'm sure you must encounter a few along the way.
Of course, there are many. So I mentioned one already, data quality isn't a killer, you can get around it. The second one is this question of AI, machine learning, deep learning. What's the situation here? And I come from older school AI. So I would say if it passes the Turing test, i.e. it's doing something as well as a person could do it or better, then you could consider it AI. And actually, proper AI is not pure machine learning, because the myth here is you've got enough data to train something. Well, technically, unless you're really big, like a Google of this world, often you don't have enough data. You don't have enough known outcomes to actually train a model. If you think of something like money laundering, there's 100 ways you can launder money. Has someone catalogued them all every time they see a case of money laundering and tagged it correctly? If not, you can't build a true machine learning model to deal with that. So the myth here is that the best AI models are actually a combination. They're not pure machine learning, deep learning. You'll find scenarios and rules in there, because your best people know what to look for. If you're looking for trade-based money laundering, you might want to look for something like a U-turn. If you're looking for a particular type of fraud, you might want to look for ID manipulation, and someone will tell you how a person does that. So you build that in, but then you turbocharge that model with things like machine learning, things like traditional statistical analysis techniques, clustering, outlier analysis, and it becomes a composite model. But what's really important, it has to be explainable at the end. Whether it's for a regulator or whether it's for GDPR purposes, you need to be able to say that on that day, 2.5 years ago, the model chose you to have this product offered to you for this reason, or it suggested you might be a fraudster for this reason, and you need to be able to explain it. So where you use things like machine learning and deep learning, they're embedded in your model, but the ultimate outcome is explainable. So a piece of machine learning may tell you that if somebody's got a property worth between 100 and 300,000 pounds, they're highly unlikely to have 4 offshore bank accounts. Okay, that's machine learned. But that's not the final outcome of the score that suggests that maybe that person is a criminal. Final outcome is the combination of that and the fact that they may be linked to somebody who is a known money launderer, or they may be running transactions of cash in a circle. And these are other inputs that have come from experts. So always consider your model composite and explainable model, not just, I'm just going to get this wonderful bit of deep learning and it's just going to work it out on its own, because that rarely ever happens. That makes sense.
Absolutely. And so much of our world has evolved over the last 12 months. But I'm curious, for any business looking towards the future, how do you see decision intelligence continuing to evolve over the next 18 months? Is there anything we should be looking out for?
I think you've got 2 things that are happening in parallel. One is the digital revolution, which of course has been happening for ages, but it's super accelerating now. So historically, digital revolution was up for the masses. So if you're going to deal with consumers, you try and make it digital, mobile, and all that stuff. Now it's finding its way into many, many more spaces: commercial banking, business banking, dealing with high net worth, whatever it may be in banking, or a complex broker relationships in insurance, or in the world of tax, customs, and all of those things, grants. They've all got a digital channel to them. But a digital channel has to make the right decision. What you don't want is someone coming in on a digital channel thinking they're going to get a digital experience where they're going to get an answer in like the next 5 seconds. And then effectively in the background, it goes away, puts it on a queue for a person who then goes away and does some stuff. And 2 days later comes back and says, computer says no. That's no longer an acceptable user journey. So digital is going to drive immediate decisioning, which means that for 95% of the cases, you want a model making a decision, and only for the very hard stuff do you go to a person. So that's the first. And then the second is where you do have business to business and you still have the concept of, relationship managers and people and sales, you're going to see they're going to be using CRM systems, the Microsoft Dynamics, the Salesforces of this world, and those sorts of tools. But again, they can't be drilling into all of that data, trying to work out what they should be offering a customer, or whether a customer has status has changed such that they should be concerned. So again, decision intelligence will sit behind those platforms and make informed decisions and provide those decisions back to those relationship managers. An example would be, hey, have you noticed Quantexa has just done a Series C? They've got a huge amount, whatever it is, 50 million of GBP in their UK account. And actually, they're also making transfer wire payments to Australian, Singaporean, North American, Canadian entities. Shouldn't you offer them FX execution or FX hedging as a product? That is something the data can tell a relationship manager who may have 40 other companies he's looking after. He can't know all of this. So decision intelligence will be this big engine that sits behind digital channel and CRM channel. And I think that's going to be the thing that you will see happening over the next 18 months.
Well, I'm conscious we've covered a lot of ground today in our 30 minutes together. So for anyone listening that would like to dig a little bit deeper, find out more information, what's the best way of finding you guys online and equally contacting your team if they've got any questions?
Sure. Probably the best way is, of course, the digital channel. So if you go to www.quantexa.com, there'll be plenty of white papers and ways to reach out to people, get demos, etc.
Well, I think so many businesses right now are focusing on data decision making and the value that decision intelligence can provide, and why providing relevant and timely context is so essential to business success is such a big topic right now. And I just cannot thank you enough for spending a few minutes with me, sitting down and talking about it in a language that everyone can understand. So valuable, and a big thank you for sharing that with me today.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have the opportunity to share some of the insights that our customers and ourselves have been working on over the last couple of years. So it's a hugely interesting topic. Thank you.
Business intelligence for some time now has made waves throughout organisations because it does provide useful information and data that ultimately allows executives to make decisions for the good of their business. So a big thank you to Imam for sharing what decision intelligence can provide and why providing relevant and timely context is essential to business success. I don't think there is a company out there that are not trying to make data-driven decisions now, and I'd love to hear more about the challenges, the successes that you and your business are going through right now. One of the reasons I record this podcast every day is everybody share all their stories. We all put them in a big melting pot, and then together we can learn from each other. So there is a seat at this podcast if you would like to come on and join me and carry on this conversation, or even if you just like to drop a few value bombs, send in a few messages, a few questions, we can do that too. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. is at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. But I've got another guest to prepare for now that I'm going to try and bring you tomorrow. It's an absolute belter. So I'm going to leave you with that little teaser. So a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.